Okay, so I hope everybody can hear me. So I've switched over to a different microphone here. So, Randy, thank you so much for your introduction. Um, as I said, this demonstration is going to be more of a chance to kind of get you started in thinking about what you do on your digital journey. Understanding that there's a lot of work involved in some of this, that it's something that you need to plan for. I will share with you that all of you will do an awful lot of planning that's involved with, where you put the press, how much electricity you're going to need, what's the air conditioning requirements you have, exactly what's the space that I'm going to use for that. So those are all things that I know that everyone will spend an awful lot of time on as they're doing their planning. But the one thing that I see often with our clients is they don't do a whole lot of planning as to exactly how that workflow is going to go through their system and exactly how they're going to plan to manage some of those things. So that's some of the things that we want to talk about today, is how we're going to be dealing with some of those things, or what are some things that you need to be thinking about. So one of the things that as a company Label Traxx can do is we have a staff of people that are all experienced in the label industry. So we can answer almost any question that you might have in relationship to how our software can help you in the digital world. So at this point, what I'd like to do then is go on to our next slide and talk about some of the things to consider when you move to digital. Now, one of the things that I think everyone understands is that you're going to have shorter runs. Some of the values of the jobs are going to be less. You're going to have an increase in the number of orders you have, and some studies have indicated that you will have almost twice as many orders coming in that you've had in the past. You're going to have a lot more SKUs than you've dealt with before, and it becomes much more an issue of how you're going to administer those jobs as they're going through the system. So right now I'm going to ask Randy, so when you got into digital, what were some of the things that made you think about going digital as opposed to just staying flexo?
Well, the first thing that we did is that we noticed back in 2005, 2004 that many customers were ordering higher qualities labels, designing labels for higher decoration, higher print quality. However, the run lengths were going down and becoming shorter and shorter. So we were finding that on digital presses, we were running 3 jobs a day in very short runs, running only 3 a day because of the number of color changes, plate changes, and so forth. Although they were happy with the print quality, we just couldn't keep up with demand. So most investments that we always make are made because of our customers' demand, either for a new type of product or to just fill their delivery requirements. So what we looked for initially, and we actually implemented both Label Traxx and digital printing in the same year. It just so happened they came together. So when we got into digital printing, we did it to basically move work from conventional to digital. So we didn't really have a digital printing model. We just knew we could load up digital with work that should be digital and load up our flexo with jobs that should be flexo. And it was within a year we had to buy a second press because it was a well planned out project.
Okay. So were there any surprises that you had along the way? Some things that you thought were going to happen and didn't, or some things that did happen that didn't? Kind of those types of surprises.
No, other than the normal attrition that you'd get from learning digital and finding out what type of a press operator you should have, and where that operator should come from, and the technical ability. Because we're introducing Label Traxx at the same time, handling of the files in rev control for some of the over-the-counter pharmaceutical was actually very easy. So, over the years we've learned a lot. Reference to the shorter run lengths. Going after businesses where we wouldn't have gone after before, where someone may have 60 different fragrances on a health and beauty product, where they may have 60 or 70 different fragrances, but they only want 5,000 labels each of 70 different fragrances. We wouldn't even go after that in the past without digital. So with the introduction of digital, we definitely went after different markets that we wouldn't have gone after at the beginning.
Okay. What I'm going to say now is, if you have, so when you started, did you feel pretty comfortable with the workflow you have? Because from my experience in coming from the industry, and then also, now selling to the industry and going in and consulting our clients, is workflow is really very, very important to what goes on within, these customers. So did you do a lot of work in planning as to exactly how it was going to start going through your system?
Absolutely. As we started seeing the number of digital items increase, we also at the same time saw the number of flexo plates that we needed to make decrease because the flexo runs were becoming longer runs, not as many SKUs, not as many items, so we were making less plates. So we started moving people's responsibilities, associates' responsibilities in pre-press around so that people would be better serving the needs of our customers. So as that happened, we started using, before the introduction of JDF or job definition format, we had one person that would do file plans all day long for digital work to set up the digital presses. So as time went on, we found that we had to automate more and more. Without ESCO, without automation engine in our pre-press department, we would not be where we are today.
Okay.
The idea of automating is absolutely critical.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to our next slide now. Now, there are other things to consider. You know, people need to think about educating your sales force because this becomes a new issue for them. You know, in the flexo world, plates and plate changes, color changes have always been a unique, strange issue that is associated with flexographic or just regular printing. Now with digital printing, a lot of that just goes away. You know, so you need to educate your sales force and your customers. So for Randy, so when you guys started on this, were there any issues that you had in dealing with your sales force and with your customers?
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Can you hear? Okay. All right. We always have issues. You know, we did have issues even from the beginning with both the sales force being educated. You know, everyone thinks immediately, you know, there's no printing plates, proofing's very easy. You know, and our customers as well. Our customers, they start hearing that you have digital and they think they're going to get 1 to 2 day turnaround. And to some extent, the turnaround can be much shorter for digital. However, if you're following all your standard processes and all your certifications, there is still a proofing process and still a validation process prior to being able to print. So yeah, we did have some education of both the sales force and customers that did have to take place.
Okay. So with the increased number of jobs, did you have to increase your staff at all from the number of jobs that you were having? Tell me a little bit about some of that.
Yeah, at the very beginning, I think when you get into digital, you'll find that you don't necessarily increase your staff, or at least we did not. However, we found that we were repurposing them to do different things. Eventually, as the business grew, we found that we didn't have to increase the staff at the same rate we would have if we didn't have automation. So the plate maker started doing some, you know, pre-flighting. So we start just repurposing people in our pre-press department. At the very beginning, we would actually use pre-press to actually gang all the jobs and do all file planning. Today, we actually do all file planning is actually done by customer care. So if you think about it, if someone orders 30 items and they're all repeat, customer care will enter the order, produce a file plan, hit the send button, and then they hand deliver. Well, actually, we have a scheduler that actually brings the job to press, and the job's already sitting there, fully stepped, fully planned out to run. In addition to automation, we also have, depending on who the customer is, the type of substrate, the type of industry, we also determine how many to run, and that automatically comes through with the file plan as well. So automation has made it so that we can grow, fill the need of our customers, and not put on additional staff.
Okay. I will share that as I visit clients, if there's one thing that I feel that I observe a lot is that they start adding staff. And personally, I feel if you plan this well and you understand what you're doing, you can manage it similar to what Randy has done here. Because if you can manage that staff growth, then that starts adding money to your bottom line. And it's an area that I think a lot of companies really kind of fail to consider. It's kind of like, well, I've always had this many salespeople for this many jobs. It just kind of expands exponentially as it goes along. If you can control that growth, you really can control the profitability of your company.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Okay. And you may have heard this, digital will swamp you. You're going to have thousands of SKUs that you're dealing with. Proofs are going to be coming in quicker because you have a lot more proofs that you're going to be doing. You're managing revisions and versions. ganging the labels together, to be much more cost effective for what you're doing. The JDF communication is critical on that. And I know, Randy, you've done some of, made some comments in regards about that right now and how you've, managed that. Is there anything you'd like to add as to, how your business has changed and how you've managed that?
Absolutely, and I really think it's something everyone that gets into digital needs to think about. We've worked closely with HP, with ESCO, with even Label Traxx, and relative to automating as much as you possibly can, taking away as many touch points as you can. So we have written an automation engine, in ESCO's automation engine, we have written hundreds of workflows that basically handle files. The trickiest part about it is really educating the customer to send you files that we can handle right out of the gate. So we still have to run through some pre-flighting workflows to actually analyze customers' files. But in general, we can run a file through pre-press, decide where it's going to run, do a proof in a very short period of time, and the customer is kind of blind to the amount of work that we do on it. The JDF communication helps even further because we can add variable data, we can add blank streams, even on a file plan. Sometimes on file plans, you talk about run lengths being short. Our average run length is still in the 3,000 to 4,000 foot range. However, there's always jobs that can run 200 to 300 feet. In those type of jobs, you may want to gang jobs into file plans that even introduce blank streams on the web for efficiencies in inspection. So the automation of multiple SKUs and being able to produce a proof quickly to the customer is critical and only happens through automation.
Okay. Well, good. I'm going to go into the next slide. And I also want to point out, I failed to mention at the very beginning of our webinar, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the questions window below the GoToWebinar control panel. And either we will try to get the question answered during our discussion here, or my salespeople will respond to you back via the chat during the chat window. So I wanted to make sure and mention that. Now, one of the things that I like to talk about, so for me, when I was a user of Label Traxx and in the converting industry, estimating was probably one of the most important parts of what I was doing in my business. And one of the things that I feel very good about within Label Traxx is that you have definitions for each and every press that you have, and you understand what those costs are, how it affects you in time and material and what you're doing, and how important it is to get those things correctly. If there's one area that I find with clients is that they don't spend enough time in understanding what some of those costs are. And we have a specialist here, Steve Miller, I'll mention his name, that if you ever have any questions in regards to how you might want to do some of those things and understanding, your fixed costs or how you might want to approach that, Steve Miller is an excellent resource to be able to draw on and have a discussion with. So if there are any financial people out there who want to get into debits and credits, Steve is your person to talk to. So one of the things that, when I was doing estimates, so we talk about, being accurate, and we can support really, HP, Zycon, Domino, Jetreon, new hybrid presses, Mark Andry, Aquaflex. We can support all of those different types of presses. But, the one thing that I tried to do when I was doing estimates is, so if I was actually doing an estimate on the phone with the customer, I wanted to be able to respond to them quickly. Not everybody wants to do that, and I appreciate that and I understand that. And I was very fortunate that I had customer service people who could also do estimates on the phone. So one of the things to think about, and I always suggest this to companies, is to think about what would you do if you could do this. The reason that I wanted to do an estimate on the phone was that I could ask the customer for the order right at that very minute. I would be able to, talk to them and say, here's your price. How do you want to do that? Label Traxx allows you to be able to manage that with all of these different SKUs, with all these different changes. You can have consistent estimates between one estimator and another. And as I mentioned before, repeatability of process is very important. So for those people who are converters and do estimating all the time, how many times have you had someone call up and question one estimate from another? why is this one higher than this one, or why was this one lower than this other one? This is one of those things that I found is very important. So as you went digital, now Randy, I got a question for you. Is um, what was the customer's experience as you were going through with going digital? Creating this more of a hectic internal issues for you. How did you approach some of those things on responding to those internal changes with external expectations?
Okay. Well, when it comes to estimating of digital, we found it to be much simpler. So, obviously we chose the HP Indigo path for digital printing. It's very, very predictable. If it's a simple job with printing on it and then maybe varnish or laminating or even select varnish, it's a very easy job. Very quickly you can produce an estimate. You can compare it to a Flexo quote and see what your crossover is. So we really didn't have many problems with that. Actually, in most cases, we were able to get our customer estimates even quicker. Our particular, somewhat unique situation is that we do a lot of many different types of products. We're extremely diversified. So you're talking label tickets, single-sided, 2-panel labels, 3-panel labels. We do some jobs that go through 4 different pieces of equipment because they need special die cutting. So we run jobs in Flexo with extended content and then run it back through digital finishing unit. So because of all that, without a tool like Label Traxx that can accurately estimate the times and waste for each individual piece of equipment, it would be next to impossible to do that. We find that Label Traxx over the years has gotten better and better at it by adding multiple pieces of equipment that now we can add to the job. And one other thing I want to mention is, people keep talking about automation. I know I've mentioned automation engine and, automated workflow. I sometimes think people overestimate what they think automation is. Automation is just simply a way of getting data through pre-press out to the press without any user intervention. So we do stuff like any color profiling, any mark sets, like if there's a certain mark set that you need for a digital job, or if a job is going to go through 4 pieces of equipment, the workflow automatically interprets that and knows what direction to run the work in on each piece of equipment, something where the user doesn't have to interfere and do anything with.
Right.
So I just wanted to make that clear that automation can be very simple, actually. It's just taking away the user input along the way.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things I also want to point out is as you're using some of the things within Label Traxx, we've added features to where you can attach documents inside of Label Traxx that, again, maintain consistency in what you're doing. So if you receive a document from a customer that is their product specification, you can actually attach the entire, say send you a PDF that says, here's my product spec. You can attach that in the custom product that has that product definition. So if they ever come in for an internal audit of your operation, you can say, this is what I'm always managing off of. Every time I pull up your job, if I need to question what is your specification, that is attached to your document. So that's one of the things that I like about it, as a user and as selling the product. And I think it assures good, clean reorders. So for me, estimates were important. And if there was one other thing that I loved about it was the fact that you could do reorders, essentially duping an old order and creating a new one. It just, if you did it right the last time, you're going to do it right this time. And that was one of the things that
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can touch base on that too, because with the introduction of the document module and document control, it's become. I don't know how we'd live without it today, because we do attach every customer PO, email history to estimates. We attach customer blueprints to jobs, and through automation, we actually customers approved proofs automatically get attached to every. A copy of the approved customer proof automatically gets attached to every product in the system. So I can go into any product and just click on documents and look at the most recent approved proof. And it all happens automatically. No one needs to drag and drop it or copy it or do anything of that nature. So the document control is really critical.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to go to the next slide. And the next one talks a little bit about our crossover analysis. And I'm going to be having Jenny Whittle, who is our sales representative in Europe, to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and start it up. Jenny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and start this. It's a little video, and Jenny will do the voiceover of it, and then we can have any questions from there. Whoop, hold on, I hit the wrong one. There we go.
So using the price comparison tool in Label Traxx is simple. After creating your estimate, you simply go to your reports menu, select compare to linked estimate, and Label Traxx builds the graph showing you exactly at what point it's better to use your alternative production method. This example is showing you a standard label configuration, but the software also copes with more complex work like pouches. You simply add in your seamers, your laminators, or additional equipment, and you can see each time it recalculates the price for you, adding in the extra materials and time needed for production.
Okay, so Jenny, do you have anything that we'd like to add there?
No, does anyone have any questions? I mean, that tool is really simple to use. I often find that you can compare anything, whether it be digital or conventional. It could be different finishing productions, whether you use varnishes or laminates. There are so many different things that you can compare, and that tool is really handy in educating and getting them to move over to a standard process. Maybe they had a lot of spot colours and you want them to use more CMYK versions, or a different way of producing it that makes you faster and more efficient in production. Your customer gets a better cost saving. So it's a great tool to use in all sorts of different areas.
And one of the things that I get a lot of questions on from people when I do presentations at trade events is what exactly is the crossover point for digital versus flexo? And there's not exactly one magic number. People like to say, oh, 2,500 feet, 1,700 feet. But that's going to vary based on the types of jobs, the type of finishing, is what's involved in doing all of this. So one of the great things about a tool like this is the fact that, you can get a very good solid number as to what is it I want to do for this specific job and how is that going to work. So that's something that's very valuable. And again, it's something that everybody wants to know, and it's a feature that's built directly into Label Traxx.
Another thing to remember, though, that is, and we use the crossover tool, not exclusively, though. We don't use it for everything. And we're constantly quoting flexo, UV flexo, water-based flexo to digital. However, there's just so much more that goes into the analysis that the crossover tool alone isn't enough, because even if today 5,000 makes sense to run digital, but yet next month 20,000 makes sense, you need to consider the added cost in a month or two where you need to make plates, and also can you produce the same label in both environments quality-wise. So there's just so much to think about. There are times when you may want to go way beyond where the crossover point is before you consider going flexo, because you do need to make, add traps, add color corrections. So it's just, there's a lot to think about rather than, black and white that this crossover tool shows you.
And one of the things, too, you can think about is because one of the things that I know is always an issue as well as scheduling. Sometimes you may want to, take a look at, I've been running this job flexo. What happens if I run it at this quantity digital? So being able to take a look at, what's that going to do some of the profitability issues associated with what I'm doing. So again, you don't use this tool as a rule that I'm always going to follow whatever the crossover point. Once that crossover point, it's always this. No, use this as a management tool to help you manage your business and be more successful in what you do. Because again, it gives you better insights as to what you're doing and where you're going with your business. Okay, Jenny.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jenny, Randy, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'd like to just touch base on what you just said. That's absolutely critical. There are times when production backlog will determine where you run a job, and you may run a 20,000-foot job in digital when you know it's not best suited for digital, but you do it to meet the needs of your customers, and this tool will tell you how much less money you're making even on the job. This tool will at least tell you where you stand. So yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Yeah, it's important that you've got flexibility with a system like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next slide, we talk about automation for digital workflow. Now, a lot of these things are things that Randy has already covered. We've talked about multi-version aids, file planner, integration with automation engine, we haven't really talked about product approval within eTraxx or eTraxx module. You're able to take advantage of some of the product approval issues. And then also instant quote and order placement for digital within eTraxx. So one of the things that I hope that people can achieve by planning their workflow and managing that better is eliminating some of the bottlenecks they might have, and some of the things with using our JDF with ESCO are very important on that. So now I have a question as I was thinking, Randy. So how many jobs do you have that have multiple versions? Is it the bulk of what you do, or some of the jobs, just one or two labels on it, or are they mostly 60, 70 SKUs per job?
The nature, excuse me, the nature of the business we have actually dictates that most of our jobs do not have multiple SKUs, because the pharmaceutical doesn't allow us to put multiple items on a ticket. So in and of itself, we're not allowed to do that, but I must say that we'll have a certain size label that under any other situation would be put under the same ticket. We could run really the same item, different quantities, maybe all CMYK, but for reasons of the SOPs we have written for pharmaceutical, we can't gain them on tickets. So I would say on digital, on digital work, our average number of SKUs is something like 1.8. So we do 1.8 SKUs per ticket in digital, and we do like 1.1 in Flexo. So we do monitor that every month through through reporting. So what SKUs it really are the jobs that very few jobs have one or two SKUs. Most jobs will have one, and then every once in a while you'll hit them with 10, 15, 20, 30 items on a job, and those are the ones where the automation really helps.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask a question. So as you were answering that, so prior to going digital, what would have been the number of SKUs per ticket, or was it essentially still the same because of the product mix that you had?
Well, prior to going digital, we wouldn't necessarily have gone after jobs that had 30 items on them, 60 items on them, unless they were very long runs and we could handle it in Flexo. The last thing you want to do on a 16-inch wide, 600 foot a minute press is to run 500 foot. Shied away from it. We couldn't be competitive at it, so we shy away from it. So we do have more SKUs now that we're digital, but it's because it's a different piece of business that we've gone after.
Okay. Now I'm going to go to the next slide, and we have another video, and Jenny is the presenter on that. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. Okay, Jenny.
If you're looking at digital, you'll know that comes with a lot of different varieties on the same job. And you need to be able to manage those files the most efficient way possible. So in Label Traxx, we have a tool that helps you do that. In this example, we're looking at a job that has 16 different varieties. So after creating your order, you need to be able to send across that file to Automation Engine. Now that's been sent, we can have a look at the file plan. So the top section shows us all the different sorts that we have on the job, and the bottom section shows the 4 different files that will be generated by Label Traxx. So I can manually pull down each sort, finding the 15,000s and grouping those together. Or I could use the autofill option that sorts the jobs in quantity order. Once I've done that, you can easily pinpoint all of the areas that are producing overt and the value of that work. And then we can send across those files to Automation Engine when we're happy with that. And that's sent across all the dimensions so that they've got all of the information that's stepping those jobs. So with changes that you need to make, Randy had mentioned earlier, if you need to change the press, that's easily done within Label Traxx 2. And we can have a look at the common page, change the number around, update the presses, and then send that job back over through the file plan to Label Traxx. All of those updated informations get sent across to Automation Engine without any risk of error.
Okay. Jenny, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
The integration with Automation Engine really is critical. It saves so much time in in sending that information across. If you don't have that JDF connection, you're going to have to be putting that information in manually. It just opens up the risk for error so much. And Randy had already talked about the automation being so critical in all of those different jobs that you're managing. So it really is something to look into if you don't already have that workflow in place. We work with all of our customers on getting that set up with them, and we work closely with ESCO in setting those things up, so you're fully supported by your supplier network to make sure of this, and making sure that everybody's aware of what can be gained out of Label Traxx to help you guys be more efficient and keep doing everything that you're doing.
Okay. Randy, is there anything you'd like to add? Because I know you've already done a lot about file planning and automation engine, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, maybe just one thing. Well, first of all, I've been to and seen many webinars, and they make it look really easy, and then when you go to do it, it's not quite as easy as it's shown. I have to admit that what Jenny just showed, that is about how easy it is. It's as simple as setting up a file plan and setting it to automation engine. It's really that simple. So, you do need to enter the items on the job and so forth. You'll also find that if 5 different people look at the file plan, you may have 5 different ideas as to what the ideal file plan might be for any particular job. So you're always going to have those discrepancies. There's no real wrong file plan. Also, we use file planning for Flexo as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. And when it comes to JDF, which I'm not sure if we have another slide on it, the job definition format will send many fields to Automation Engine, pretty much all the fields that Automation Engine needs to make determinations. However, you can also reach back to Label Traxx and look at additional fields and query additional fields to make additional decisions on how to process a job. It's just something to keep in mind as well. Automation Engine gives you that opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And just to add to what Randy was saying with those additional fields, and that part of that automation is going to be making sure that you've got things like your color strategy set up properly, and you can automate those for presses, for products, for customers, information on your materials so that you can get that proofing sent back out to your customers. So all of that data is really coming out of Label Traxx and being pushed with that file plan and that job information to Label Traxx. It's not just that file plan. So yeah, there's a lot in there.
There's a lot in there, yes.
Okay, thanks both of you. Okay, next slide is about material management. One of the things that we have are links to major suppliers to be able to order your material online. Being able to track whether you're going to be doing coding online or inline, managing stocks for digital, being able to have fast and reliable inventory counts, and being able to keep track of your tool inventory, and actually being able to manage things with our AutoTraxx wheels. Now, Randy, I know that you've used AutoTraxx. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, for our business, AutoTraxx is critical. Basically, it involves putting an encoder on the web while you're running the job, and we do full job costing anyhow. So while you're running the job, it actually keeps track of the material you're running. So you scan in a roll tag. It actually keeps track of how many feet you're running on that roll. It could be a 10,000-foot supply roll, and you could be through 1,700 feet. It automatically, when you go to the next job, logs those 1,700 feet to that job and starts running down the clock on footage for the remainder of the roll. When you get to the end of the roll, if there's anything left on it, it actually gets automatically sent back to production with the right tracking numbers on it. So without AutoTraxx, and we have to track every single job we run back to a supply roll of material. So without AutoTraxx, there's really no easy way to track rolls of material that go to multiple tickets. So AutoTraxx is extremely valuable. We use it primarily on digital, since Flexo will most often use full rolls of material, whereas digital doesn't always.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Randy, about material management?
Nothing specific. I mean, we use it the same for Flexo as other than the AutoTraxx feature. We use it the same for both digital and conventional. There's some additional features that we're trying to get implemented into the stock control system. However, the way it is right now, it gives us very accurate counts.
Great.
So
good.
We're very accurate with the tooling and the roll stock inventories.
Okay. On this slide here, one of the things I'd like you to be able to see is the fact that we're able to keep information in regards to your entire tool inventory. And I will share that I always felt, I don't know how it is for everybody else in this industry, that every time I walked out in the shop, it was kind of like at home in my closet. All of a sudden, I'd close the door and I'd open it up a week later, and there are all these hangers that I just didn't know where they came from. And it was like, where did all these dies come from? And one of the great things within Label Traxx is just a great way of having that database of keeping track of all of your tools, when you had them, the last maintenance done on them, what you're doing with that. And then the slide just below that is keeping an accurate record of all of your stock, your raw material. Now, as Randy was talking about, managing your inventory effectively, again, one of the things that was always very important for me was the estimating, because estimating really, Label Traxx revolves around estimating, and estimates were very important because that's kind of where you start with most of your new customers or new clients. And one of the things that I always found very effective about this tool is that you're able to see when you're doing an estimate to see if you have this material in stock. So again, one of the things that I like to do when we had a customer on the phone is ask them, if I could get this job for you tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or whenever, can you give me the PO? And I could actually have my customer service people look and see if they had the material on the floor, make the decision, as opposed to, excuse me, let me put you on hold, run out into the shop, track down the production manager and go, I've got ABC company on the phone. If I have the artwork and you have the material, can you have the job for me? And it's what I called sneaker net. It was just a very slow, time-consuming process. Now you're able to actually, if your people are trained and have the skill set, they can say, I've got the material on house. If you can get me the artwork, I can get you the job. So that's one of the very important things from my perspective in having a very accurate inventory level in what you're doing. Okay, any last questions, Randy, or anything else you'd like to share?
No, the other thing that the material inventory allows you is if you are running pieces of business where you can use alternate materials, there is a listing in the material file that actually will show material numbers that can be used as alternatives that are drop-in substitutes for that particular material. So that's actually very helpful as well.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for adding that. Okay, now I'm going to go to the last slide. This is more of a sales slide. So Randy, you are now officially off the hook. What we call tools for growth for your business. New that we're going to be rolling out is a new business module called Business Metrics, which will be a collection of reports that help you manage your business. For me, again, one of the most important things when I was managing a business was using Label Traxx as that tool to manage what I was doing to help me become more professional or more profitable in what I was doing. That's one of the things that the Business Metrics module is going to be geared towards. A lot of people might refer to them as a dashboard, but that's something that I'm feeling is going to be a great asset for our clients as we move forward. For those clients who have multiple locations, we have a new module called Financial Center, which can pull information together for financial reports. If you have, again, any questions on that, Steve Miller is the reference point on that one, and please feel free to contact him if you have any questions. And then we've also developing an API, application programming interface, for those of you who are more technical and into the bits and bytes of the business. So for those people who have either legacy systems or other corporate systems that you need to attach to, we have a new API that will be able to connect to that. It's a custom API as opposed to most of your standard APIs, which are designed just for verification within this small universe. Ours is going to be very custom. You can define it to do essentially whatever you're going to want it to do with our programming staff. And then last, e-commerce, providing e-commerce front for your customers and what they're doing. So then last, I want to point out we have some additional upcoming webinars. You will be getting emails announcing some of these. We have an estimating for digital press on August 17th at 10 a.m. And then we have an order processing for digital workflow on August 24th at 10 o'clock Central Time. So that gives us a chance to talk about some of the issues in greater detail that we talked about today and give you an idea as to exactly how Label Traxx can help in some of those. And finally, if you have any questions in regards to this webinar, it has been recorded and it will be available to people who were signed up for it. You'll be able to get it and download it and take a look at it later. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact our sales force at sales@labeltraxx.com. You can take a look at our website and see if any additional information is there. And you also have our phone number there. I also want to let you know my name is Keith Grimm, and my email address is keith@labeltraxx.com. If you have any questions or concerns, you're always welcome to contact me, and I am there to try and assist you the best way that we can to make Label Traxx perform the way you're wanting it to do, and to make sure our staff supports you in the ways you're expecting. So at this point, I think our webinar is done. Randy, I want to thank you for the last 45 minutes of sharing your expertise and experience with us. It was a pleasure working with you on this. And at that point, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, and hope to see you all during our next webinar. Thank you so much.